So think about when you hire a lawyer. When you hire a lawyer, you go into an office, you sign paperwork, and you retain that lawyer to be your lawyer. What we do right now in our real estate profession is we do this. We go in and we say, hey, I want you to represent me, but I'm going to take you to court with me. You're going to sit in court for a number of hours. I'm going to see how you do. And then based on how you do, I'm going to make a decision whether I hire you. Or the next example is if you go and hire an accountant and you say to your accountant, hey, I'm going to give you my books, do a couple of journal entries. And if I like how you do your journal entries, I'm going to formalize my relationship. So the whole idea here is to have more professional relationships and move people that you interact with quicker into a client relationship. And it doesn't have to be a formalized contractual relationship, just like Sabiha said. It could be through implied agency relationship. But the idea here from day one is that that person that you're interacting with becomes a client and not a customer. We no longer have customer service available. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to take you guys through some of the forms that we're going to have to start becoming a lot more comfortable with on a regular basis. The first form that I want to take you guys through is the RICO guide. And this is something that you're going to present to every single one of your clients. So this is going to be important because every single person that you interact with, you're going to have to go through this 13-page guide and explain to them every part of this this brochure. So this brochure is prepared by RICO. The first page is about the guide. So it's talking about why you're receiving the guide. So you're considering services from a real estate agent, and the agent is representing a client in that transaction, and you might receive assistance from this agent. And it goes on to say that real estate agents in Ontario are required to walk you through this guide, and it tells the client what's inside. So working with the real estate agent, knowing the risks of representing yourself, signing a contract, understanding multiple representations, and then it goes through about how to make a complaint. Right? There's a legal disclaimer on here. So the very first page is working with a real estate agent. And basically the guide says that in Ontario, agents must be registered, and they must complete the necessary education. They must have insurance and professional liability insurance as well. And there's consumer deposit protection. And then it has two separate columns. So one column is relevant for a seller, one column is relevant for a buyer. And it basically talks about the types of duties that that you can give to a seller and a buyer, the services you can provide to a seller and to a buyer. So then the guide is trying to sell the consumer on the idea of becoming a client. So what do you get? What are the benefits that you get by becoming a client of the brokerage? Right? So you're owed an undivided loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, and the agent has to avoid conflicts of interest. So here, the guide is basically trying to sell the client on the idea, or the person on the idea of becoming your client. And then it says, okay, what are your responsibilities? What is the public's responsibilities to you as a client? And then the next section of the guide is basically talking about the risks of representing, of being self-represented. So the guide very quickly says that, hey, there are significant risks here to being self-represented. And Rico recommends that you seek independent professional advice before proceeding as
Hello.
a represented party. And then it goes on to say that the realtor that you're interacting with, if you're a self-represented party, is really working for another party in the transaction, right? And it's important to understand where their interests lie. Then it talks about the limitations of how that agent can act with the person if they're self-represented. Right? So you cannot do anything to encourage the self-represented party to rely on your knowledge, skill, or judgment. And just
David, may I just interject for a second? Guys, remember that information guide that we spoke about that needs to be sent out to a self-represented party? This is not just for your clients. This is not when you just sit down with your clients to sign documents. Remember, this has to be sent across to anybody who also chooses to be self-represented on your listing or with your buyer. Okay, so very important for you to remember. You don't need any signatures on it, but you have to send it via email or in person, you have to give it to them. When you give them maybe even the access to the house, right? You're showing them the house, you hand them this right off the bat. If they decide to get self-represented.
Just put it down under
Sorry.
my name. And he will pop in and we keep a record of it. So if there's any water damage or any damage to the suite, we have a claim because insurance won't cover us unless someone's in there every 72 hours.
sorry, I had to stop sharing my screen to mute Gail. Okay, back in.
So quick question, because there is a spot on that form for people to sign. But you're saying it doesn't need to be signed?
So I think best practice is to get it acknowledged and signed, because you do have to prove that you've given this to every single one of your clients.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
the
I wasn't talking. I was
for you
talking to Mel,
to,
not you guys. That's right. I was cutting her hair. No agent is doing this.
David, can you mute all?
Yep.
Maybe make me host again so that I can manage this.
Okay, that's a good idea. There we go. Okay. So any assistance the
So
agent.
can you repeat that, David? Because you were cut off there. Can you just repeat your answer there?
Yeah, so I think it's the best practice to get it signed, but as Sabiha says, it's not mandatory to get this RICO guide signed, but you do have to prove that you've gone over it with anybody that you interact and you provide a service or becomes a client. So if that's the case, the best practice is to get a signature, but like Sabiha said, you don't necessarily have to go ahead and do that.
And that's because on the working with, there is a place for them to initial. You've gone through that with them.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So OREA went a step further and actually, made it mandatory that you can prove that you've presented this guide, but RICO is suggesting that's best practice too, but you don't have to, which is peculiar, but that's their position. And the guide also says that, hey, listen, at any point in time, you can change your mind and you can transition from being a self-represented party into a client relationship. And it talks about signing a contract with the brokerage. So it talks about brokerage representation, talks about designated representation. It tells the parties what to look for in a representation agreement.
David, pause for a second. Bill, you've, I think, answered your own question. It says if someone wants to self-represent, would they not require an agent? No. Self-represented means that they are self-represented.
Yeah.
This is when you hand them this guide.
And really quick, just to be clear, so if somebody sees my listing on Kijiji, calls me up as a listing agent, they want to see it, I need to provide them this information in advance of showing them the property, correct?
Yes, at the
Yes,
first,
absolutely. That's the best time to do it, right? If you're
Yeah.
calling me up and you say, hey, I'm self-represented, can you give me access to the property? As your fiduciary duties to your seller client, you should be, because you want to have the most amount of offers on the table and most amount of interested parties. And that would be the best time to say, sure, I will give you access to the property. Send me an email. I need to send you this guide though before, right? And then you have fulfilled your duties as a professional. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
guys, it seems tedious to go through some of these processes, but I think, and I strongly believe that if you embrace these processes, it is going to help you transition from this gray scale of like, are they a customer? Are they not a customer? Are they working with other realtors? If you can lean on this legislation and get extremely proficient with listing and buyer presentations very early on in your relationships, and have very clear and concise dialogue, and be able to show value from the get-go, and move your relationships into a client relationship as quickly as possible, you are going to excel, and you're gonna, be miles ahead of everybody else and the competition. And this is what
David, sorry, go ahead.
this is what TRESA is aiming to really do, right? It's aiming to transition faster into a client relationship, whether it's implied or whether it's contractual.
There's two questions, both from Marina and Ravi, that are saying that does this replace working with the realtor? It doesn't, guide, but remember, working with the realtor is signed only when they are your clients. Okay, previously it used to be when they were your customers. It's got a little bit of a change. It has an extra line in there. So that this is not replacing with the working with the realtor. Why? Because this is more specifically less for your own clients, more for who? The SRP. Okay, so when somebody's a self-representative, you would have never given them any form, not even working with the realtor. Working with the realtor, you would be doing when they're actually working with a realtor. They are your client, right? This is nothing to do with that. This is for everybody else who is, and more so for an SRP. Okay, so you still have to do working with the realtor with your own clients. Bill asked that, can they ask for a reduction of co-op commission? They have nothing to do with the commission. Remember, guys, so this is a complication. This is a confusion that happens very often with realtors. The commission baseline is always towards who? The listing agent, right? They might ask for a reduction in the purchase price because they might turn around and say, I'm not coming with another agent, right? So they might ask for a price reduction on the purchase price, but they cannot, nobody can ever ask for your co-op commission. Why? Because your co-op commission doesn't even exist. It is always the listing, the whole and totality is what? The listing part of it, right? The co-op part of it is what? Is shared by the listing agent if there is a cooperating brokerage involved. Remember that, okay?
So there's no standard set of services.
Yeah, we do keep the whole commission. Why? Because the whole commission is for whom? The listing brokerage, unless there is a cooperating brokerage and we have asked the seller permission to split it. Okay, so always remember that the whole commission is coming from the seller, and it's always with the listing brokerage, and it's yours to decide what you do with it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David. Sorry.
So services, RICO and our legislative bodies are doing a really big job to make sure that there's variety, and that we're encouraging competition on the amount of services being provided and what is being provided. I'm sure a lot of the realtors here heard about the lawsuit in the United States against the National Association of Realtors for commission collusion. Similar lawsuit has been filed here in Canada, and the whole idea there is that they don't want a bundled and services, a bundled goods of services being available to consumers, and consumers being forced to have the same services from every single realtor, because that's a form of collusion, right? Like if you're going to each and every single servicer, realtor, and saying, hey, what are you going to do for me? And every realtor has the same amount of services that are being mandated. That's, that could be perceived as, hey, that's collusion. Maybe I don't want to pay for X, Y, and Z. I only want to pay for Y. So the legislation is aiming to give a lot more variety in terms of services to the clients as well. So they're going out of their way to make sure that they're pointing out to the consumers that, hey, there's no set of services. You can negotiate the services being received, and you can negotiate the numeration for the services being received. Now, we all know that everybody out there is going to want full services and is going to want to pay full commission, but it's important for you guys to understand why these changes are being enacted. So
Quick
then,
question, David, sorry.
of course,
I might have missed it, but for the SRP, I understand that we treat them the way that we would if a buyer was represented by someone else, like another realtor. My question is, so we've shown them this property and they want to now put forth an offer.
yes.
Is it on their shoulders to prepare the offer? How do we, or is this the opportunity for us to convert that person from SRP to client? Like, how does that work? I'm just trying to wrap my.
So an SRP is someone who's already established themselves as a self-representative party,
Okay.
right? They've already turned around and said, exactly like they would say, I have a realtor, I don't want you to represent us,
Okay.
right? So all their rights lie with them, including and not limited to. Remember when I went through the presentation and I said you were not allowed to do anything that is covered
Yes.
under the umbrella of your knowledge,
Yes.
right? As a sales representative, that's
Right.
exactly what happens. How can we put clauses in it? How can we discuss closing date, deposit, purchase price? We're not allowed to do any of that. They have to prepare their own offer.
Right. So,
Okay.
so an SRP would be able to go to their lawyer and enlist their lawyer's assistant to prepare an offer. What we could do is we could also have a limited client relationship with that person, where we specify that our duty would be limited to preparing an offer for them. So yes, you are absolutely right. You can move them from an SRP into a limited client relationship. And I'm going to take you guys to the form and show you guys how to do that after I'm done explaining this guide.
Really quick question on services. Is there like an understanding of what services may cost if someone just says that they just want their stuff advertised on MLS versus, completing a contract? Like, what does that look like when they ask?
John, it's a great question. It's something that, where you guys are going to have to build out your amount of services and how much, if any, there's going to be a variation in cost to your clients. Okay.
Sorry, I have so many questions. One question is, okay, this person arrived, he says, I want to be self-represent myself. I want to be alone. So what form he will use? He will use a lawyer's form, which will be a nightmare for us because we don't even know how to read the wording. Will be just a paper. How do we proceed with the offer? Yes, I want to represent myself. Do we give them the forms? I don't know.
Well, remember, you're a listing agent, so your fiduciary duties are to the seller at that point. You can interact with an SRP only to further the fiduciary duties of your client. So in this case, if you're the listing agent, you are allowed to interact with that SRP in order to further the fiduciary duties of your client. So the SRP is going to talk to their lawyer. And if they want to maintain and be self-represented, the lawyer would prepare the offer and send it to you as the listing agent.
Can they use the proper forms? Can they use the proper forms? Or like the lawyers can come with like a really complicated contract we don't even understand, because that happened to me before.
Yeah.
So how do we help the process for represent our seller? Because if the lawyer come with a form that we don't know, you know what I mean? Or if the seller says, I don't want a lawyer, I don't want anything, I just want to give you, this is the price, this is it. So we do the extra work, we put the offer, but we get no pay.
Well, as the listing agent, you're entitled to the full commission, as Sabiha answered earlier. And what would happen here is if they do come on forms that are not the ORIA forms, then what you would do is you would enlist the seller's lawyer to help you review that offer with the seller. Okay?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Victoria. So the next part of the RICO guide talks about compensation. Okay, and how compensation is laid out and what the rights of the seller and the buyer are for compensation. Okay.
Who pays the seller's lawyer? If there are offers and one person is self-represented, who pays? And what if that offer doesn't go through?
That's a great question, Karen. And again, I think this could be a list of services and specifications that you can negotiate as part of your value offer. And, you know, I fully intend to have a very long conversation with David Corman and their office, because, you know, I think we're going to have to do a lot of work to build out some of these services and make sure that we have the proper guidelines in place to help you guys navigate some of these situations.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next part is, you know, this is so important, right? And we don't talk about this enough. If we have a buyer representation agreement signed and the listing agreement is only offering 2% and the buyer rep is offering 2%,
Type the question.
the buyer is responsible for the difference. So
They're super nice. They're really, you know, they all like, do we have all these classes available?
I think Victoria is trying to recruit for us. Thank you, Victoria. And then the guy talks about
In the swimming pool.
the guy talks about termination provisions, right? So what that looks like, expiry dates, holdover clause. So this is plain English explanation for the consumer to make sure that they understand you know, what expiry dates in the agreements are, what holdover clause means, right? There's a whole section on understanding multiple representation, what brokerage representation means, what designated representation means. And I completely agree with Sabiha. So there's brokerages up there that are basically saying, hey, we don't do brokerage representation. We're only going to do designated representations. Well, what if the seller wants brokerage representations? Now you're limiting who or the comfortability of the seller. So I think doing it per transaction makes so much sense. And we see this at the brokerage all the time. There are realtors who are glued to Sabiha's side and who need guidance and advice. And with designated representation, the fact that you can't share confidential information makes it really hard for Sabiha to give the sort of guidance that Sabiha is used to giving, and make sure that those lines are not crossed, and make sure that, you know, she can really go the extra mile and guide different realtors in different situations. So I
And
think,
guys, I was discussing this with David, and I was saying that I would advise all new realtors, and this happens anyways, right? Like when you all know that whenever you have a listing coming up, you kind of discuss things with me, right? Not even the new realtors, some of the more seasoned realtors too. And if you feel that there is benefit to your clients with that kind of relationship where it's not just you, but you and I both together, which will make decisions for the betterment of your clients, then there is no harm in having that conversation with your clients and saying, hey guys, my broker of record works very closely with me, and so I would like to have this as not designated. For you to explain that to them at that point, that this will be beneficial for you to not put it under designated representation.
I have maybe a silly question regarding designated representation. So what if I have a couple of clients and I'm asking generalized questions, not specific to any one of my client or deals? Do you know what I mean?
That's okay. That's okay, because remember we talked about designation. It has to be a personal information that you're sharing with about your client. So you're not doing a personal. The second you say a friend of mine, it is okay, because it's becoming an open. It's another conversation that you're having, right?
Got it.
Especially a brokerage like us, right, John? Like where we have Monday morning coffee meetings and all of that. We're very aware of a lot of
Right.
stuff that's happening with it's a very open forum that we have in our office, right? So yeah,
But we can
absolutely.
still have those generalized discussions.
Absolutely,
If
yeah,
they do
because nobody
relate.
knows what it's about. Yeah.
Right. It may relate indirectly to something
Sure.
I'm working with, but I'm not disclosing any real
Sure,
information.
absolutely.
And I think a lot of the other brokerages that have chosen a model are going to change. That approach is going to change, because as customers see this guide and ask questions, I think those brokerages are going to have to start adjusting their policies, because if a seller says, hey, I want brokerage representation because, you guys have 150 brokerages, agents, and, I just see value in getting serviced by the entire brokerage. What are you going to say to them? No, we don't have that service. We don't allow that. It's not going to work very well, right? You're going to have to explain and know the differences between the two, the limitations, the advantages, and then together with your client, you're going to have to make an informed decision of what suits their interests best for that particular client relationship. And I think having that freedom and flexibility to make that choice is going to empower you to be a better realtor. Okay. The next section says that multiple representation is not permitted unless each of the clients involved agrees, which is still the case. But now with TRESA, we need to make sure that this is disclosed at the earliest available opportunity. And we're going to review OREA Form 235 and 236 that lets you stay compliant for this. And then, of course, there's some risks to multiple representations. So the guide goes into what those are and what to expect before you agree to multiple representation. Okay. And it says that you can refuse multiple representation, right? So if the client doesn't want multiple representation, they can refuse at the time that you're disclosing on multiple representation exists. And then, this is the government's idea of more transparency in the transaction process. So there's a bit of a caution here about open contents of other offers. Right, and it kind of says, hey, if you're a seller, keep these things in mind. If you're a buyer, keep these things in mind too. And it goes through how to make a complaint. And as Sabiha said in her presentation, now the complaint process, along with being a bit more stringent, RICO can initiate complaints without a member initiating the process, which is the biggest change. Okay. All right, guys. I know this is a long meeting. I want to get into a couple of the forms to show you what they look like. There's been very little changes to a lot of the forms that we use all the time. I'm going to get into the forms that are important for us to take a look at, and we're going to do them in order of form number. I think that's going to be the easiest way. So all your agreements, your amendments, your waivers, your mutual releases, they all stayed fairly the same. The first form I wanted to bring to your attention is So let's go take a look at listing agreement. So now the new portion of the form at the top is this designated representative field. So if you put a name here, if you put your own name, if you put your team in here, you can put multiple representatives. The minute you fill out this section on the listing agreement, then you've created a designated representation situation. If you leave this field blank, then it's automatically multiple representation. Okay, so this is really important for everybody to know. Okay, that's the
I
difference.
just want to highlight that. So guys, just remember that usually the agency is between who? The brokerage and the client, right? Designated representation means that the agency is now designated to a specific sales representative.
Right, so the minute you fill out this form here, that's when a designated representation starts. And if you leave it blank, then it is a multiple representation.
David, John is saying that maybe we should do a 10-minute break in the middle, just for everybody to, if they have to do anything or take care of anything.
Sure,
At
I
some
think that's
point.
a great idea. You guys let me know when you guys need to go on break. You guys want to do a break now?
Wow. Keep
Okay.
going.
All right, that's a great idea, guys. So we're gonna take a 10-minute break. It's 12:30. Let's come back at 12:40 and we're gonna continue with the forms.
Great.
Thank you, guys. And thank you so much for your patience with this presentation as well. Okay, all right, we're back. 12:40, 10-minute break. That was a great suggestion. Thank you for making that suggestion. I'm gonna share my screen and let's keep going. So that was the listing form. I'm going to go through the seller direction to share the substance of offer form 209, but I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna go to form 230 and show you form 230 first. So this is the listing agreement, and this is for seller limited services. So this is if you want to.
Homework after. And then I think we're gonna have dinner.
Oh, sorry, David, question for you. On the listing agreement, no matter what, we put the broker. Sorry, we put the brokerage name down. And if they want designated representation, we still put the brokerage name down, and then below that, the designated rep part as well, right?
Yes, so the brokerage information stays the same. Sutton Group, Sutton Realty, 33 Pearl Street, 905-897-9555. You put the seller. Only what changes, whether it's a designated representation or a multiple representation, is this one line, nothing else.
Okay.
If
Thank
you include Elliott Tibet here, it's a designated representation that you have with the seller client. If you leave it blank, it's a multiple representation scenario. Okay?
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem, my pleasure. So let's take a look at form 230 first.
David, I'm just gonna, while you look for that form, I'm gonna quickly talk about a question that Holly had asked. She said, how does an SRP get into the house without an agent? If I'm the listing agent, if the listing agent is not taking them. So two scenarios. One is the listing agent can give them access, but no advice. Number two is what? That you will get a written permission from the seller per person every time. Okay, and you can then let them go in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
So what happens if somebody is unable to, let's say I have a listing, an agent calls me and says, hey, my client wants to see your listing, but I cannot show it to them today. I'm busy, whatever. Can you show it to them? Can we still do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we've done before and we do it again, right? That is you just being cooperative with an agent. Sometimes you will see on listings, sorry, sometimes you will see on listings that you are you have to pay part of the commission to them, right? If they have shown your
Correct. Yeah.
property. You see
Yeah.
that. That's totally, that they can ask for that too, but it has to be in writing. That is part of the disclosures, and it has to be in writing now. You can't just say that, yes, you have to be in agreement of it prior to.
And it has to be in writing between, let's say, myself and the other agent, or
All four
between
parties,
myself
all
and my.
disclosures need to be everybody on the agreement, right? Remember, guys? All disclosures need to be all four parties. So the brokerages, seller, buyer.
Can I ask
Okay.
a quick question?
Yeah.
Self-represented, to allow them access to your listings, isn't that a little dangerous? Who do we know who these people are?
yeah, but Bill, the whole concept with TRESA is they're taking this whole concept of fiduciary duties to a completely different level. If the seller makes a decision that they want to let somebody in through their house, knowing the risks, it's their house. They make the determination.
But how do you do background checks, or like we're all, bonded and whatnot?
Not our responsibility. The seller
It's not our responsibility.
has to consent to it in writing, and they take the risk.
So we're going to give out lock boxes, codes to.
Oh, so I mean,
And the other thing I was going to ask,
you can't give
very,
up log
can you?
box because
What if?
the
Sorry,
code
go ahead.
you can't give up the log box because the code can't be reset, right?
Mhm.
But Sabiha and I and Manjut, we've already talked about bringing in technology partners into the brokerage that will show us, what technology is out there, so we can give out combinations that are floating, that are rotating, that are one-time access only. So we're going to look into technology like center locks. We're going to look into technology that allow us to give remote access to a specific person, and it's a one-time only access. So we're going to look into this and see what solutions we can.
As long as
Also, codes can be changed, guys.
Yeah, but
even
guys, but once the way they've tried this in the past, and you don't want this technology to limit access to regular realtors, because we've had this, this technology prior, and people couldn't even access lock boxes because you'd had to have certain passwords and whatnot. The other thing I was going to say, what if your clients, your sellers, just say, no, I don't want any one of these self-representatives showing
That's
property?
totally fine.
And
All rights remain with the seller.
I get that, but would that create like complaints going to RICO or OREA that's saying that we're not being cooperative as that's the only thing I'm thinking about.
No, you would have that in writing from your client that they're not allowing this, right? And once you have that, everything needs to be in writing, and you're good. You're good as gold.
Yeah.
Hamza, we already answered this question about the commission. So if they submit the offer, yes, absolutely, they need to do it themselves. Whether they have a lawyer, whether they write it out themselves, it's not your problem. The offer is coming from them. You are not typing out the offer. And the commission is always the listing commission. So it is not a shared commission with just about anybody. It is only shared with a cooperating brokerage if you choose to do so. But the listing is always fully in your name, and the full 5% commission is always in your name.
Can I just add something there? I know the only people that are allowed to receive commission are licensed realtors and lawyers. So can the lawyer ask for the commission?
Lawyer can ask for the commission directly from the seller, but it is not coming out of the listing agreement. You can have an agreement with the seller saying,
can they put in
sorry,
go ahead. I mean, could he put it in the offer? I know realtors are lawyers are allowed to be compensated through listing transactions. Can they ask for the cooperating commission?
They cannot ask for cooperating commission, no.
Okay, okay, good.
No, but you can have, you can have, what this will be one of the disclosures that is in there actually, is if there is a commission break that you're giving your seller, if the represented party is your own or the buyer party is your own or whatever, in that instance, you will have it in writing from beforehand, right? Because you would have already discussed the guide with the seller and you would have already talked to them that there is a possibility of an SRP. At that point, the client might turn around and say, well, if there's an SRP and they're asking for a reduction price, what is going to happen to your commission?
Okay.
Sabiha, David, Erwin here. Sorry, I didn't see a little hand to plug, but listen, isn't this going to be a case where, I mean, there is not a client I would recommend ever that you'll let someone in who is not an agent by themselves. So is this even, like, do you even see this happening where a seller's going to say, yeah, I'm going to let a total stranger into my house? I really don't see it. I mean, my advice to them right from the get-go would be, no, if somebody comes up and just wants to see the house by themselves, you're going to say, no, get somebody to represent you, or my agent needs to be present.
I mean,
just tagging on to that, is this an opportunity for this to be one of the personalized services that we charge for outside of the commission? Like if we're going to accompany an SRP to a showing.
Now you guys are starting to understand, you know, what the legislation is trying to accomplish. Tashana, can absolutely be a limited service that you provide to a client.
Okay.
Okay, all right, guys. So we have a listing agreement for a limited service representation agreement. And again, you have the designated representation here, which works exactly the same way. This form is identical to the listing agreement. The only difference is that you have a Schedule A where you're going to set out what the services are that you're going to provide to your seller client. So it's the exact same as a regular listing agreement, but the limited agreement has a schedule where you set out what is included. Okay? Is that clear?
Where would you use that?
So if you have a buyer client and you're approaching a property that is not listed in MLS, this is where you would use a limited listing agreement.
Got it.
To make sure that
unless they are saying that they're going to be an SRP. This is for someone who is allowing you to do a one-time offer, representing them as a seller or a buyer, guys. Right. But they're allowing you to represent them. Be very, very clear about this. This is not to be used with an SRP.
With an SRP home seller, right? This is to be
or buyer. You're not sorry. The buyer has a different form. I'm sorry about that, but it's a similar form that they have for buyer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sabi is 100% right.
Sorry. So is this the is this the form we would use for those limited services that we've been talking about, like accompanying them to a visit or?
No, that's an SRP, guys. That is not to be confused with this. An SRP, you are never ever putting any form in place. You're just supplying them with that guide. An SRP is a self-represented person. This form is not for a self-represented person. You are actually representing a party in this case. Okay. But it's limited. You're not staging it. You're not making virtual tours. You're not putting it on MLS. You are maybe just bringing an offer on somebody's property and they're saying, we're okay for you to represent us in this one instance. You're not listing their property, Before we would do either an exclusive or we do a customer representation, we would go into form 320. We would not check off number 1. We would go check up number 2, which clearly dictates that it is a listing which is not listed by any brokerage, right? We're not doing any of those because they've taken off customer representation. This is
Okay.
somewhat of a customer representation form, but it is limited and is including fiduciary duties.
So we don't expect to be using, I mean, I don't expect to be using this form a whole lot, only because unless the real estate market becomes littered with for sale by owner signs, we're going to be working with another realtor on the listing end. Do you see it?
Well,
the
yeah, I
same?
mean, this is why I'm
Right.
bringing in the buyer side of it as well, right? There's an identical form for a buyer with limited service representation too, right?
Right.
So you can have a listing, someone comes through the house, which is the neighbor's sister wants to put an offer on that property that you've listed, and they're not an SRP. They want you to represent them, but they want you to represent them only for that one transaction, right? Flip
It'd be a
side,
different
this,
form though. Sabia, we're looking at a seller, limited
yes,
services.
exactly, Gail. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying, that this form has a sister form, which is the buyer
Okay.
limited service representation,
Yes.
right? So it's
let me-
good to
let me
talk
get
about
the
both forms
form,
side
and
by
then we
side,
can- Yeah.
Okay.
right?
So
So
this
go
would be
ahead, David.
yeah, this would be used for not properties that are not listed,
Right.
right? So for self-represented sellers,
Right.
if you wanted to push them into a limited client relationship where you have fiduciary duties to them, but you're limiting the scope of service, you would use this form. And the perfect example would be if, you know, a property was not listed, or, you know, it was not listed and you had a buyer client and you wanted to go ahead and bring them an offer and discuss the offer, you could put that as a limited service to them and sign them under this agreement.
Okay. And David, can you scroll it up again to show me where you fill in the commission? Okay. So it's the standard form that we've always played
identical
with.
to a
Got it.
standard form. The
Except for
only
Schedule A.
difference is the Schedule A.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy has brought up something. Randy, what you're talking about, that's a mere posting. This is not what this
Hi.
is,
How are you, honey?
right? This $9.99 but no other services is
Good
not
evening.
what
I'll
this
take that.
is for.
Excuse me, it says MLS on the top of that form, so why would that be MLS if it says MLS on the
Because it
top of that
can
form?
be MLS, right? It doesn't have to be only in the instance that you have a buyer.
But if you're doing a one-time deal, why?
It doesn't have to be a one-time deal. It's just, David is just giving an example of it may be a one-time deal. It's just one of the examples that you may use this form for, right? David, you're muted.
For a mere posting, you would use the same form. And you're
Yeah,
limited,
for a mere posting, you would, yeah.
and for a limited, and you would put that your limited service is, hey, we're only doing a mere posting in the MLS, and you would use this form to go ahead and do that. Form 230.
Guys, okay, can I just go back to it for one quick second? All right. What the Schedule A is really, really good for is what we do. You know, we've discussed this a lot of times when we've talked about commissions and different, you know, standards of commission, right? I've been through a lot of coaching webinars where they've talked about have 2 tiers of commission. If people are really shooting down your commission and saying listed for such and such price, right? You can say, okay, I can list it for such and such price, but with 5% or 6% commission, you're going to get a virtual tour. You'll get beautiful staging. You'll get the photographs done. You'll get a drone video made. You will get all the bells and whistles. You'll have a 5-page feature sheet. You will have all the works for 6%. For 3%, I can do this, this, and this only, right? So understand that why this form is in its place. These are just, what we are saying is just examples of if you are actually knocking on somebody's door and say, how about you sign this form because I have a buyer, right? Or you can also have somebody's call you in for a listing presentation. They don't want the full services. If they don't want the full services, you can also utilize this form, right? So it's just basically making it very, very clear that you are now not there's a listing form, and then there's a limited listing form, which is now actually working in your favor, because now your client is not expecting you to do all and everything, but only partial of what you would do for a listing.
Yeah. So OREA Form 209 is seller direction to share offers. So this is a best practice form. And you can get seller's initial to share price, deposit, conditions, closing date, or anything else that the seller wants to share about the contents of the offer. Okay. Now it's important to understand that the seller can choose to share this at any time. They can change their mind, and they can it's basically the wild, wild west. There is no structure when it comes to open offers. And the seller really has full reign on what they want to do. It is the best practice to get this form signed to make sure that if anything goes sideways, you protected yourself and you've consented to disclose everything that's relevant.
So David, if nothing's initial, then it goes without saying that they don't agree to disclose anything.
Well, again, this form is a best practice form.
Mhm.
So we strongly suggest that you use the form, but you have to follow the lawful instructions of your seller. So in an offer presentation, if push comes to shove and your seller says, hey, disclose the price of the offer, then you have to go ahead and disclose the price of the offer. You can't, wait to disclose the price of the offer, but it is best practice to go ahead and get this form signed.
Guys, this form does not have to be signed at the point of the listing, though. All right? The open offer can be a decision made at any moment, right? So guess what happens? Initially, we have the house in the market for 2 weeks. No offer comes in. One offer comes in, right after the second offer comes in, and a third offer comes in. Now, suddenly, the client has decided to disclose part or all of the offer. What do? You say, great, let's quickly sign this off. Okay?
And that
So-
would be the best practice.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So there would be nothing to sign at the time of actual client relationship. This is as offers present themselves. This
Absolutely.
is determined at that point. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, David.
Because that's part of the negotiation, right? Now an offer is $200,000 over all other offers, but it's full of 10 conditions. You're never going to accept that offer. However, you might want to write the price of the other offers based on that. So you have to have it's just a room for negotiation, and you discuss that with your client. Let's disclose the purchase price, but not the conditions.
Okay. So this is the seller's direction regarding proper and offers. They changed this form a little bit. So it basically tells the seller what the best practices are about offer acceptance.
David, I think this is a question maybe a lot of us may be thinking, what is the expectation of the office of how to disclose these different offers? For example, I have 5 offers. Do I use BROKERAGE and say, okay, offer 1, offer 2? How does it work in practice?
Ravi, that's a great question. We are looking at a technology provider that is based in Australia. They've been dealing with open offers in Australia for, I think, about 3 years now. This platform, I'm told, is very easy to use and is really helpful. We actually have them coming in next week to do a presentation to our leadership team, and we will be rolling it out probably in early January for all agents to use. But you know, it's something that we're still learning and putting some context around.
David, if I may, Ravi, you would absolutely not put it through Broker Bay. Guess why? Because through Broker Bay, you have the chances of when you send in all showings, you do not share the contents of the offer with anybody except for the people that have actually sent the offer. So you have to be
What
very,
should we
very
do in the
careful.
meantime? Because
Sorry?
this goes live today. What should I do in the meantime if I'm in this scenario? Email?
That's what I'm saying. So what would you do, right? Now, 4 offers have come in. You will directly email the agents that have brought the offer only. I would not touch Broker Bay because there will be always that worry that I have in the back of the mind that all agents that have shown the property, have booked the property, may get that information, and you absolutely don't want it in open forum.
And it cannot
I
be
agree with that, Sabiha, but I just wanted to let everybody know that in Brokers Bay, you can go and uncheck and check specifically the agents that you want a message
For
to be
sure,
sent with.
for sure, Kelly. But I know how many of these things happen with Broker Bay, right? I'm
of
sitting on
course.
the flip side of it. I just, please, guys, I always tell you, err at the side of caution, right? So,
And do you specify, sorry, and do you specify exactly the brokerage and the price? Not obviously the agent, but the brokerage and the price,
no,
or just the
no,
price
no,
of the first offer, the price of the
absolutely.
second offer?
Yeah, just that. We've received
Okay.
5 offers under this, and this purchase price. That's it.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah. Follow the lawful instructions of your sellers. That's what TRESA is all about. Okay. So guys, this is the buyer representation agreement. And as you can see, they have designated representatives here. And again, if you leave this blank, you're creating a multiple representation situation. If you write in a name here, then it's designated representation on the buyer side.
So David, can I just clarify that multiple representation is a 2-pronged representation? So it can be anyone from our office who brings an offer, or it can be ourselves, the listing agent, bringing in an offer, and that is the preferred format?
It's not preferred. It's whatever you're
available.
And you decide at the time of entering into a client relationship.
Sabiha, what do you mean whatever is available? Sorry.
So whatever is available to you with the decision of your client, right? It's an availability for you. As a brokerage, it's the choice of the client. The seller client and the buyer client has reserves the right to choose if they are for or against designated representation. And you have to, of course, discuss the pros and cons with them of that.
Yeah, and both are available and both are mentioned in the RICO guide, which you're, required to put in front of them and take them through. So at the time of going through the RICO guide, you can explain what both means, what are the pros and cons in both, and then you can guide your client as to, what is going to work best for their particular situation.
So what happens if, for an example, you put your name in there, and then the seller decides to change, because they can change it whenever they want? So do you have to go back and
no, they can't change this at any time. If they want to change this, then you have to do an amendment to the listing or the buyer representation agreement. Okay.
Right. So, and that requires consent. That requires everybody's consent. So
yeah,
you can ask for it to be changed at any time, but there is an actual process that you have to go through.
The any time change is only for the open offers, guys. Daly's asked an interesting question. I just want to come to it, that he's saying that if you fill in a designated representation, are you giving up your right to double end it? Absolutely not, Daly, because you wrote Daly in there. So Daly is able to bring the second an offer on his listing, or a buyer to his listing. Okay, you are designating yourself. I hope that helps.
Okay, David, in Bill and I's case, we're 100%. We're on every single transaction. we can't even give this, I mean, obviously we have to legally give this option to as designated representation, but that
They're
means
changing
that,
so many rulings
yeah,
in real estate.
that,
So
so now
much.
Bill and I,
Now, if you don't show up to appointment, the RICO, real
David.
estate board, charge you $1,200 if you don't cancel. And charges who? Charges the agent. And they charge the brokerage $1,200. And the
Can
brokerage.
you mute them,
Okay,
David?
yeah, I muted that. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously, the designated representation, Bill and I are 100%, we're on every single listing. If they sign designated transact, then one of us has to bow out, correct?
No, it
you
says
can-
representative or S.
Yeah, so you can put both your name and Bill's name on that line, and then
Okay,
both
and
of
then
you
it
guys are-
eliminates the rest of the brokerage.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then guys, we have exactly the same form for a limited buyer representation agreement. So let me show you guys that form. And I think it's form 330 would be the same form.
Sorry, just while you're looking for that form, David, just trying to wrap my head around the designated versus multiple. So
Sure.
I know you mentioned earlier in the presentation, Sabiha, that there's a requirement that if you're not able to service the client, you're out of country, that you need to have someone in your place to do so. Does that affect a designated
Yes.
designation?
That's only under
Absolutely.
designated. And you can sign an amendment to either the buyer rep or the listing rep. And for a short period of time, you can designate another representative within the brokerage to take your spot.
Also, Tishana, you can do an additional. Remember, this is designated representatives. So now David is traveling. He, however, wants to keep his hand on the deal. He wants to confirm to his clients, I'm traveling, but I will still be in touch. Sabia is, however, helping me with it. So now you do an amendment and you add Sabia additional to David. Okay?
Okay.
So the buyer limited representation agreement is identical to the buyer representation agreement. The only difference is Schedule A. So Tashana, to answer your question, you could do a very limited buyer representation agreement where you clearly spell out that you will not provide any skill, knowledge, advice, nothing like that. You're only going to take the client out to see 10 properties, and you're only going to keep this active for 10 days, and they're going to pay you $100 for this service. So if you wanted to do a very limited buyer service representation agreement, where you limit what you're going to do in a big way, but you're going to transition into that client relationship on a limited basis, this is the form that you would go ahead and you would do that. So yes, you can go ahead and have a very limited scope in how you deal with clients, and then you can go out and show properties. Because remember, you cannot show listings to an SRP if there are not your own listings.
What? So okay. So my question now becomes, so this additional fee, the additional fees that we're charging on this limited services basis with a buyer, let's say we show them the 10 properties, none of them pan out. How do we go about collecting that $100 or whatever the fees for service are?
You collect it at the beginning, hopefully, before you show them any of the properties.
And is that made payable to the brokerage? Yes?
Always.
Always.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting question from Bill, and I'd like to go back to my presentation. Bill, right off the bat, when I talked about designated multiple representation, David, I'm just going to share my screen for a
I
quick
stopped
second.
sharing mine. So
Bill, just to answer your question there, I'm just gonna go to the designated. Bill, you see this? When two realtors from the same brokerage. So if you are the designated realtor, there's only one. It is not doing away with multiple representation if you are the party representing both parties. It's only designated, happens only when there's two separate realtors from the same brokerage. I hope that helps.
Not really.
No, I agree, not
Okay,
really.
so Bill's question was, I'll tell you what Bill's question was. Bill's question was, let me read that out. I thought designated eliminates multiple representation and no double ending. That's not the case. Technically, it's still double ending because it's from the same brokerage. This is talking about only when there's two representatives from the same realtor servicing the seller and the buyer, right? At that
Like Bill and I.
point, exactly, like you guys, where you guys are a team. So let's keep it clearer, right? So say for instance, if Kelly, I'm bringing a buyer, right, to your designated listing. Your designated listing has Bill and you on it already. Okay. Now I am the realtor bringing the offer. That becomes a designated representation scenario.
Okay.
Right. However, if it's my listing, I am the designated representation, then I am also bringing the offer. I'm allowed to do multiple representation in that case. Right? Because I'm the one person that is designated to that listing.
Yep.
Okay.
This may be a learning for everybody, so I'm going to share this. This is happening as we speak. So I have a listing. I have two people that both want to show and have Bill and I represent them. Now, is this grandfathered in because it happened yesterday on the old rules of client?
Yeah. Anything before 1st of December is allowed till the March 1st or March 30th. I don't know what the date is. I forget. But
So I can sign them
anything
as,
that was signed or started, any job that was started prior to 1st of December, it can carry on the way it was till March.
okay, so I booked the showings with them on yesterday.
Yeah, you already have a relationship that's formed with them.
Okay, so I can sign them up as clients then.
Yeah,
Okay.
Kelly, just make
Any
sure.
But you didn't
customer
sign them up.
agreement? Sorry?
You're Kelly, you don't have them signed up under buyer rep. So you would have had to have them signed up under buyer rep prior to today.
But the relationship formed already. Like the text messages went out that the appointment is 2 o'clock.
There's already a relationship set up. Yeah.
Implied representation, right?
Implied, yeah. It's
Okay,
already in place.
Can I ask
Okay.
one more
So
question?
I can sign, so my client representation agreement can be dated for tomorrow, but because the showing was set up yesterday, I'm clear.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think the forms are available anymore, though. That old buyer rep agreement is not available.
I have the client rep sheet.
Okay, I have a question. What happened now? Before we used to have a client, for example, the seller, and when we're doing multiple, the buyer was our client. That was our customer. Now, no, if we're doing multiple, both of them are our clients. So to avoid that, can we refer one of that to our broker, but we get a referral fee because I just want to avoid the conflict or not? How does it work? How does it work?
Can I ask one question too? Because you said you can double end, but can another agent from our office bring an offer if we sign the what was that?
Designated?
Yeah, the designated.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they can. Just
So-
under designated, meaning there's a firewall between the two realtors. And none of the personal information should be shared with me.
But that was always the case, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand this. I'm getting more confused now than I was when it started now.
Why?
So-
What's the confusion?
So
Let's go back
basi-
to this for a
because
quick second. One second, guys.
I thought the designated meant that our brokerage cannot sell our own listings. That's the way it sounded at the
Absolutely
beginning.
not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So designated means you can't talk about your listings with anybody.
So Bill,
Any-
Yeah, let's go
any
back to
personal.
this for a quick second. One
Like you
second,
can't
guys.
talk
Hold
about
it.
divorces if they're having financial distress.
Yeah.
Bill,
Which you're never
designated
supposed to do anyways.
representation forms an island within the brokerage where now the island is way more pronounced. And it kind of forms like a sub brokerage within the brokerage where you cannot share confidential information with management, with administrators, with anybody else. Before, the brokerage was seen as one family, right? So as soon as, you could share
Well-
freely within the family, right? As long as you didn't breach your limited duties to your client. Now they're creating more of an island around you for designated representation. The idea here is that these mega brokerages are arising. So there's, 200 realtors in one brokerage. The likelihood of multiple representation arising is higher. And the idea here is that you can have full fiduciary duty to your clients without any limitations in designated representation. And that's not the case in multiple representation. You can't have full fiduciary duties. You have limited duties in multiple representation. So in order to protect the consumer better, they're giving us an opportunity to have a situation where we still have full fiduciary duties, even if we're cooperating within the brokerage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
So Bill, I'll just go over this for a quick
no.
second. Designated representation, when two realtors from the same brokerage are listing and selling the same property, but acting as an independent service provider, right? The agency is not between the
No,
brokerage.
that one is easy because it's two different agents, two different clients. My question is what happens if I am the client representing the buyer
That's
and the
okay.
seller?
Then it's a multiple representation and it's permitted.
But before, my client was the seller and the buyer was the customer. So now
No,
both
there's
of
no
them are
customer
my
now.
clients.
Yes, absolutely.
So how, like, what happened in that backtrack? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have an island within the brokerage.
No,
you
this is not
still-
right. I don't
you
get this.
still create a multiple representation situation. So Victoria, if you have a seller and you have a buyer and you're a designated representative, you still have a multiple representation situation happening within your little island.
okay,
but
so
I
do
think that's a conflict of interest.
It's a
because
conflict of
before-
interest, 100%.
It's like,
Yeah.
for me, that doesn't make any sense.
No,
But
exactly.
no,
I
I
don't feel
think,
comfortable doing it. And that's why I'm asking, okay, if I don't feel comfortable, can I ask an agent from my office, from my brokerage, to fulfill the client's fiduciary duty and I get a referral? Because at the end, it's my client. I just want to protect the full
Yeah,
interest.
I don't see why not. You're doing a referral of a buyer for a property. As long as you keep yourself completely separated from
Yeah,
that
yes.
situation.
Then you would
Yeah.
have
And we
to
have to disclose
disclose,
that.
you have to disclose you're getting paid your referral, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
My
it's impossible
understanding
to have
was,
two clients and both of them win. I'm always fighting for my client. I don't care. Like, I care about my customer, but my client is my priority.
Yeah,
If I have
that's your
two
personal
clients, what's the
choice.
fight?
We're talking about not personal choices right now. We're talking about what the rules are, right? That's a personal choice, and 100% you're right. If you're not comfortable with it, you can work in that favor.
but my understanding is now, let's say I have a listing, if Victoria brings me an offer, it's not multiple representation anymore. Because we're two individuals.
No,
That's
it
what I.
depends. It
That's
depends.
the way
If
I'm
you
reading this
Depends
now.
on what you
One
chose.
second, guys, hold it. One realtor at a time. So Bill, if you
Yeah.
have a listing, right?
Mhm.
If you have signed the designated line on there and you've put yourself as a designated realtor, and then Victoria brings in an offer, it's not multiple representation, right? If you've not signed that line on the listing agreement and Victoria's not signed that line on the buyer representation agreement, then it is a multiple representation.
What about the case when one only signed? Like one has it as a designated and one doesn't? How do
It's
we?
still, it depends on the listing. If the listing is saying designated, then it's designated. Okay, as
So
long
what
as there
if
is.
when seller said he wants me to be designated and somebody walks in and wants me to present the contract, we have to.
Yes, so you are the designated. So you're still designated, right? You are designated to that listing. You're allowed to put an offer on there. It's just you, right?
Yeah, but like usually you explain everything, but the client always asks, Victoria, I hire you because I trust you. What's your advice? So what's the best advice that you can give either the buyer or the seller?
Unless, remember why I said there should be a designated? Only in that one instance, in my view, should it be designated when there is too many issues associated with that listing and the seller, or too many associated issues, personal issues with the buyer. Otherwise, you
If you're
should
selling
not
your
sign the
mother house,
designated.
which one will you use? If you're selling your best friend's house, which one would you suggest?
I
Designated
would
or not?
I would not do designated. If it's
Okay,
a
that's what I
normal
thought.
listing,
Okay.
I would not do designated.
That's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
That's what I need to know too. I mean, I can fully understand why the Toronto Real Estate Board came up with this, even though the market we're
They did
currently
not. This is Oria.
experiencing.
This is Oria and Rico,
This
guys.
is, well, that explains a lot actually. But the market that they've done this for has come and gone. However, the points that they're trying to make, the fact that they allowed us to continue to do double-ended deals, I'm quite surprised because I thought they were going to take that right off the table. But now they've provided an arena that we can still do it. But my question is, as Victoria's was, you know, I need to hear from you guys which of these two designations are best for our client and ourselves, designated or multiple. So if you're getting
So
into a
Gail,
personal
just
situation,
for a quick example, right? So if it was designated, you can't discuss the full and total benefits or issues associated with your client with me, for instance. Okay. Now, a lot of times it has happened, you and I have discussed your specific deal, right? You would not have been able to do it in a designated situation. This is why I think multiple representation should be open forum, because it lets you use your whole potential as a company, right? You're not a solo person in this brokerage. You have David, you have me, you have Manjot, you have everybody that you may want to discuss something with specific to your client, right? If you put it as a designated, you cannot do that anymore because I might have a potential client, or someone else, or Bill Macris might have a potential client for your listing, right? You have secluded yourself in a little dark hole by designating that listing. You would do that only and only if there is multiple issues associated with that, and you do not want the whole office to know about it, because you have close to 200 realtors and you might think that there might be a multiple representation situation.
got it.
You're just taking away services from your client if you're putting it as a designated, in my view.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I understand that now.
So Sabiha, is it more like, you know what, like what we used to do, like, you know, we don't talk too much about, you know, like what our client's motivation is to sell, only to the people that we require the help from, which is, let's say, like
Yeah, but in designated, you can't do
No,
it with even the people.
that's what
You
I'm
can't
saying.
even talk to me about it.
I understand. But for the sake of, let's say, the argument, if people are asking, what do you think would be better? I would say, you know what, if you sign this, I cannot even talk, even if I want to. If we have issue or whatever, I cannot talk to my manager, where
Absolutely.
if we have that, but I know we've been doing this right now. They're doing a little extra, but I know that's why probably we are so confused, because we are doing this already. So I'm not going to tell entire 200 people in our office that my guy is separating. I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm not.
See, Regina, how many times you've discussed personal details because you need advice from David and me, right?
Yes.
If you were in designated, you will not be able to do that.
Yes, but then at the same time, I'm
Get-go.
not.
Remember, that is established at the time of the listing or buyer representation. So from the get-go, you cannot discuss any part of that client situation with any of us, whether or not you will get a multiple offer from the brokerage. You're just not allowed to discuss anything at that point, because there may or may not be an offer from Victoria on your property.
It seems to me that 99.9% of the time you should leave it blank.
100%, Karen, 100%.
Oh.
And then keep your mouth shut or talk to someone only that you require to.
Right.
So in a very practical sense, it's just a matter of if your client has very personal things they don't want talked about with anybody else, that's the only time you might suggest you want to do a designate. Otherwise, you're giving up the entire support system of the brokerage to help get the deal done.
Very articulate, John. This is why you do videos way better than I do.
The way my mind works, I just boil it down to practical. I'm trying to.
Amazing.
It also helps avoid a multiple representation situation within the brokerage. Yeah. If the listing is a designated and somebody else in the brokerage brings in an offer, you don't have to sign the multiple representation form.
Absolutely, you don't. Yeah.
Michael Harding has a question. What is the best practice for buyer representation?
I wouldn't sign a designated relationship because then you are giving up all the listings that are in multiple representation in the office. Aha, David, I made you think.
Yeah, you did. Can you explain that a little bit more, Sabiha?
Are you talking about Form 330?
No.
Oh, no, okay.
300. 300.
Okay.
300.
Yeah.
So say you have a buyer, right? And you signed that it's a designated buyer, designated representation. So I am the only one in the brokerage that is, right? I have a listing in the brokerage, which is open under multiple representation.
Okay.
Right? But I am doing a specific designated representation for myself, for my client. Right? What is the benefit of me doing that? Because I'm taking away something that is open for multiple representation in the office.
No, as a designated representative relationship with a buyer client, you have a fiduciary obligation to show them any and all listings, whether they're part of the brokerage or not.
Yeah, but what if what if the listing is open for multiple representation?
Yeah, that has no. Are you saying that you can't show them the listing, Sabiha?
You can show them the listing, but right off the bat, it's open for multiple representation, that listing.
Okay, I don't get it either.
No.
I'm trying to wrap that up.
You're saying what's the use of showing them a multiple representation listing when they're your designated representative for them, so you couldn't do it. Right?
No. If you have a relationship with a client, it doesn't matter what type of relationship, whether it's designated or whether you choose to be part of the old system, you still have a fiduciary duty to show them all relevant listings, whether they're part of the brokerage or not. So the way I would look at designated representation or multiple representation is when it comes to your fiduciary duties to your client. That's really what this is all about. If you're part of a large brokerage that has 200 agents, then the chances of you being in a multiple representation situation and having limited duties to your client is much higher. So TRESA wants to establish a process where you can still maintain and have fiduciary duties without any limitations in a situation where you're part of these bigger brokerages. And this is what designated representation is compared to multiple representation. It allows you to have fiduciary duties to your clients in a wider array of circumstances. That's all it is.
Okay, so David, I have a question. If I'm a designated representative for the buyer and the buyer wants to put an offer on a multiple representation listings, do I need multiple representation form?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's what Sabiha said earlier. The listing agreement dictates.
Yes, the listing agreement would dictate whether you're in a multiple situation or not.
So why would we have designated for any buyer?
Sorry, can you say that again, Michael?
So why would we have any designation for any buyer at all?
Yeah, I don't see much sense in it either, to be honest.
I guess you cannot disclose the buyer's motivation, I guess, to your own brokerage. You cannot I mean, you're not supposed to disclose that anyways, but
Yeah, that's yeah.
Then when you close it, it's a piece of shit from China. But it does get shit. I love you.
So yeah, can you
Yeah, I don't know how it keeps on muting though.
okay. All right, let's keep going through some of more
Yeah.
forms. There's a couple more forms here we should go through.
Please, yes.
Okay, so multiple representation. Let's take a look at this form because it might answer some of your questions. So I have to log in again. Spent so much time that it logged me out. Okay, so now TRESA basically says that at the very first opportunity of it being a multiple representation, you now have to disclose that and obtain consent for that situation in writing. So let me give you an example. If you're showing a house to your buyer client and it happens to be a listing of the brokerage, as soon as the buyer says, hey, we like this house, we're thinking about putting in an offer, that's when you have to pick up the phone and call the listing agent and say, hey, I have a buyer who likes the house and they're probably going to put in an offer. And that's when you have to get consent for multiple representation. And there's a whole bunch of different multiple representation. So the first one is the old-fashioned multiple representation where everybody in the brokerage has chosen multiple representation. And then now there's 3 other scenarios that could happen. So you have multiple representation and limited service representation. So the seller hereby acknowledges that the listing brokerage may be entering into a process to enter into buyer representation agreements with buyers who may be interested in purchasing the seller's property and requires a seller's written consent to represent more than one client in the same trade. Seller understands and agrees that one or both the seller and the buyer are receiving limited services and representation. The listing brokerage shall have a duty of services, representation, and disclosure to one and or both the seller and buyer, and more particularly set out in the agreement with the respective seller or buyer. And there could be multiple representation and designated representation. So the seller acknowledges that the listing brokerage may be entering into a process to enter into buyer representation agreements with buyers who may be interested in purchasing the seller's property, where the designated representative represents both seller and buyer and requires the seller's written consent to represent more than one client in the same trade. So this is if both the buyer and the seller are under designated representation. Right, and then there's a fourth scenario where it's multiple representation, designated representation, and brokerage representation. So this would be where, you know, the seller is under a designated representation, but the buyer is under brokerage representation. And then this scenario would apply.
How would you know if you're not dealing with both, that the other person has it under designated? Like you don't know.
You would have to ask the other the other agent, what kind of representation they have.
This is as clear as mud.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is if my buyers don't sign anything with me, I still get my commission, and that's going to stop, right?
No, it's not. Remember? No, it's not. Guys, come on. We're going to go back to the slides for a quick second. What is that called? Implied representation. It is absolutely allowed, Gail. They're just 10
Good.
slides. It's not 50 things. Like these forms are just additional out there, right?
So
Just
they're not
remember those 10
mandatory.
slides. No, forms are mandatory, but
Right.
but remember the rules are just all of them are on those 10 slides,
Mhm.
right? And what you're talking about is implied representation, which is absolutely allowed, right?
sabiha, will we
Right
get
here, implied representation. Unwritten, but by action is allowed for both buyers and sellers.
So let me
Okay.
just clarify this. So the third time John or I take out the clients we've been working with, and we've never asked them to sign any sort of commitment to us. If they buy from us, I mean,
Yeah.
if they buy through us, not our own listing, you know.
Let me answer this question.
David, 1 second, let her finish. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
So it's not a complicated situation. The listing that they want to buy, someone else, some other company has it. What paperwork do I have to get from both the buyer and the seller? Looks like I'm going to have a file as thick as my arm.
Why?
Well,
why would you have anything from the seller? Seller, you're not representing the seller. It's listed with another company.
Well, that's what I'd like to think.
The perfect gold standard is what? You do the working with the realtor, you do the buyer representation, you do the agreement of purchase and sale, you do the confirmation of cooperation, and you end it with the 600 forms, which are your FinTrack, right?
So
The
same
first and the
example.
second, which is working with the realtor and buyer representation, are not mandatory forms, but they're best practices, which our brokerage wants you to follow because we want to make sure your commission is paid. Because if any issue arises without those two forms, your commission can land in jeopardy, right? But if you choose not to do a buyer representation at any point of your offer, or your client chooses not to sign it, what do we ask you as a buyer, as a buyer representative? Put the form in the package, cross it off, and say client did not want to sign that form. That is best practice, right? But what are you working as? An implied representation. The first day somebody calls you up and says, I want to see these houses, I'm looking for such and such property. You first of all ask them, are you represented by another party? No. You want me to represent you? Yes. That's implied representation right off the bat, just like we always practiced. It's allowed.
You're going to give them the RICO guide as soon as you see them, or you're going to send them the RICO guide at the time.
Same old. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah.
There's best practices, which the brokerage, poor Arsh, why does he keep saying like get this sign, get that sign? Because there are instances that come to David and my desk all the time where a commission was not paid to a realtor, and we have to contest it. When we have to contest it, what is helpful is all the black and white. Every contract must be in black and white, guys. We all know that because nothing happens, it's all good. When something does happen, then you need everything in writing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
David, can you show that multiple representation form just 1 more second? I want to see the last.
Absolutely.
Multiple representation and designated representation. Is basically the way I read this is like you said, the very top one is the same, and then depending on how other people have their client services arranged, you need to have that checked off accordingly if it's multiple representation.
Right.
Absolutely.
And guys,
I was under the impression that limited representation avoids multiple representation, right?
No. It's just limited to the service that you're providing your client.
Sorry,
It's still
designated. Sorry,
client.
I thought
He's still
designated.
client.
I thought designated representation eliminates multiple representation within the brokerage.
But Jay, you can, just like Victoria asked earlier, you can be a designated representative for a seller lead and then have a buyer lead that you're also the designated representative for. So that would be multiple representation,
Right.
right?
Right. To be safe, doing deals within the brokerage, we try to fill one of these circles, ovals.
And where does Form 325 reside?
So Jay,
Does it sit in
sorry,
our
Jay,
office?
just to go back and answer your question, if you're doing deals within our brokerage, the only scenario where you don't use this form is that if you have a designated representative on both sides of the transaction. So if you have a buyer designated representation and a seller designated representation, then it's not multiple representation
But that with two different realtors.
with two different realtors. Exactly.
Right.
Sorry, Gail, go ahead. I cut you off.
I was just inquiring with this Form 325, does this form reside with our brokerage, or is it something we have to table to the listing agent that we're taking the offer to? Seller, brokerage, real property. It sits with our file, right?
So this is if you're representing the seller, you're using this form. This goes in front of your seller client. So if you're the listing agent and you've been informed that it's going to be multiple representation, you take this form to your seller client.
David, scroll down for a second. Go down. Right.
Here we
See,
go.
Gail,
Signature of
there
seller.
is no, what Gail is asking whether both parties needs to sign this. No.
Yeah. So
No.
this is a listing agent's form. Form
Listing agent's
325.
form.
Got it.
Yes.
And a similar one exists for
Yeah. And then
remember 325 and 326, Gail?
Yes, I made a note on
This
326.
happens. When does this happen? The minute you show your buyer client a listing from your office
And they
and they
express
say,
interest.
we want to put an offer. This doesn't go out with the offer. This is just being done at the point of, and then you shoot it out to whom?
The listing agent.
Absolutely. Good. Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there, honey.
I'm getting there.
the same form is for the buyer to consent and acknowledge that they're going to be in multiple representation. So one is for the seller and one is for the buyer.
And what is the number?
It's always
for
going to the other
brochure?
realtor, guys.
And what's the number for that brochure that we can just print it out and have it?
That's on the RICO website.
On the
So
RICO
go
website.
to rico.on.ca. You're going to see that guide right there, front and center on their homepage.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Can I just say that you both are doing a really good job of trying to articulate a very complicated transition, but have RICO put any change management documentation together at all that we could, refer to help better understand? Like, I've always come from a world where it's clearly this was world yesterday, this is world today, and the lines are dotted, and it just helps to understand the whole transition.
So you can go onto the ORIA site. You can find all of that. RICO has 4 different videos, which I also have shared on multiple occasions with my emails. I'm going to quickly share something, David. While you're doing this, I can just go into my thing. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry. 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. So I put this together. Sorry, I'm not gonna stop sharing. David, you can go ahead. I'll pull up the form first and then I'll share it.
All right. So we have forms 325 and 326, which are for multiple representation. I'm going to go back and show you form 216, I think it is. Yes, so this is seller self-represented acknowledgement and consent. So let's take a look at this form too, because we missed it the first time around. So this is the seller self-represented party acknowledgement and consent. This is not an agreement. TRESA is not allowing realtors to sign any agreements with unrepresented parties. So this is strictly a consent form. It's not an agreement. It's between our brokerage and a seller for a property. And this is basically them saying that, hey, they're unrepresented. We have an ethical duty to deal fairly, honestly, with integrity, legal duty to exercise due care, legal duty to avoid misrepresentation. But there's, significant risks, and you should consult your own lawyer. But this form does a couple things. So the first thing it does is it allows you to put a sold sign if the seller initials this box here. The other thing it allows you to do is it allows you to use electronic signatures for signing offers. And the other thing it does is it has limitation here for Family Law Act. So without those things and the seller signing off on this form, you wouldn't be able to put a sold sign on the property. You wouldn't be able to share the sold price with other parties, and you'd have some other limitations. So this is an important form for you guys to know if you're dealing with self-represented sellers.
So David, is this self-represented seller?
So you are representing the buyer and
Yeah.
the seller is self-represented.
So
So
he's a
you're not
private-
really
A private sale. So
private
where's
sale,
my
exactly.
commission?
So the buyer would pay your commission.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're not allowed to enter into an agreement with a self-represented party, the commission would have to come from your buyer.
Okay.
David, may I?
Yes, please.
All right, guys, John, I've created this.
Yay.
Yay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
I'll share it with the link for this video.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabiha. And that would show which forms we need for what? It just wasn't clear. It wasn't big enough on my screen.
So
but-
Elliot, the forms will be added to your templates that I've created in web forms
As soon as they become available, we're going to add them in.
as soon as they become available.
So if I have,
Right.
sorry, if I have a listing going in tomorrow or the day after, then how do I get those?
You can go to the Oria website and you can actually download a PDF and start using them by exactly like I'm doing. Like if you guys take a look at where I am, oria.com/ just log into Oria, and then when you go view forms, you can actually download them on the top right-hand corner
Okay.
right here by pressing this button, and then you can fill it out.
And it's fairly easy to go through it because it is like series 100, right? We all know from what 100 is and 200 is. So it's like, it's not a lot of,
Okay.
Sabiha, can you kind of walk me through again the situation when we have self-represented seller, property is not listed on MLS, and we want to make an offer? How is this process even happens? Like
so this process happens, you go knock on the door, right? You know from your client buyer or that they are really interested in this house. You go knock on that door, you say, hey, I have a buyer for your property, right? They say, sure, we'd like to sell.
What if the seller says, fine, I'll pay you commission, bring me the buyer, but we cannot
So 1 second, let me finish. So you go knock on the door, you say to them, we have, like previously, I have a buyer for your property. Would you like me to represent you just in this deal, in this one deal, right? So you do that limited listing agreement signed by them. where you say it's only for this buyer within this time period. You're not doing it on MLS. You're not doing anything else to it. You're just bringing an offer and they're agreeing to pay you such and such commission because that's right there on that form. Right?
Okay.
Second instance is they say, we don't want you to represent us. Our lawyer can prepare the forms for, can do the sign back for us. You bring us the offer. You bring them the offer. They share it with their lawyer. Now they're self-represented. When they're self-represented, what do you need to provide them first and foremost?
The brochure.
Information guide.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you start that conversation and you knock on the door, what will you have ready with you? The information guide. Right? And all of this is happening when they say, yes, we're open to sell the house. If they say no, you just walk away. But when they say, yes, we're open to sell the house, you discuss with them the 3 different various ways you can represent them, not represent them, or they have a realtor friend, right? They may have a realtor friend or a sister and they say, hold on, you have a buyer. Let me talk to my sister who's a realtor and she'll get back to you on this, right?
Okay.
Or they might
say, yeah, I still want to be self-represented, but I'm okay to pay you commission. How is this process going to work if we cannot get the commission?
You do not get commission from self-represented people. You will do a limited client. Remember this, right? That customer part is gone out. When somebody is self-represented, there is no contract between you and them. There is nothing that binds you. Not verbal, not understanding. Like Gail was saying, that is an understanding. Sure, bring your buyer. I'll let you deal with it. Right away, your commitment is established. Right? The second they say, sure, we'll deal with you. Bring the buyer. Already, without signing any documents, what has happened is you are now representing them. Verbal understanding has happened. Email understanding might have happened. Text message might have happened. No listing agreement was signed, but still okay, good as gold. Right? And then what would you do? You would have a 320 and you will sign the 320, and on the 320, you will clearly say what? That this is a listing that we're bringing an offer to. Right? The confirmation of corporation. And who is paying you? The lawyers, the buyers, the seller. It always stipulates where is the commission coming from, right? Is that good?
Yes.
David, go ahead.
Okay, so let's take a look at, this is the last form I'm going to show you guys. Sabiha, do you think there's any other forms we need to really go through?
No, I was waiting for you to bring this up because I always start with working with a realtor. Very, very important, guys. Whether people sign this or not, you have to supply people with all the correct forms. That is why they're there in your templates. Please don't overlook any forms. They may or may not sign those forms because they're not mandatory, but you as a professional, which we all are, we take such pride in, please give all of these forms over to your clients. Go ahead, David, sorry.
Right. So after presenting this form, you can't force your clients to sign it. And if you present this form, they say, okay, let me think about it. You present it at the next available opportunity. They say, okay, let me think about it. You present it next time. They say, you know what? I'm not going to sign it. Just put refuse to sign and put the date and put that you've presented the form on this day, this day, this day. They refuse to sign and that goes into your folder. And that's proof that you've put this form in front of them. But now you can see that there's this section here, which basically says that the buyer or seller acknowledges having received and been explained the information guide from RICO. So that is the additional step that they included in the working with the realtor. And same for the self-represented form party. It's either a buyer or a seller, and they acknowledge, going through that self-represented section in the RICO guide with you.
Okay, so David, can I just clarify, when you talk about the information guide or the RICO guide, you're talking about the working with a real estate agent on the rico.on.ca site?
No, this one, yes.
It's
Okay,
this
that's it. That's it. Working with a real estate agent. That's it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, so we have to go through this entire guide with every single person that we interact with, and they have to sign off on the acknowledgement on form 810. This acknowledgement here at the bottom is not mandatory. This acknowledgement here, it's not mandatory. But this acknowledgement on form 810 is.
Yep.
Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay.
May I just, Andrew, right away, Andrew asks, how long before a transaction is performed is it acceptable to send your clients the guide? It needs to be right the minute that you get that call, the minute that you go out, before you go out, please send it across prior to anything. Remember that guide does not need any signatures or initials. They should have acknowledged receiving it, guys. English, just plain English, just receiving it. It's not nothing else, right? You're acknowledging that they have received it from you.
And
So
remember,
it's not like, so it's not, you're, just to be clear here, we have to prove that we have sent this to them. We don't necessarily need to go through it with them.
no, you have to
Is
go.
that correct?
No,
You
Elliot, you
have to review it.
You have to review it. Yeah.
Have to review it.
But they might not want to review it with you, right? If a self-represented person or anybody turns around and says, I don't want you to go through this with me, you have to make sure that you have some which way to prove that you've given it to them.
So
Right? Your
email.
job is to provide. You can't really sit anybody down and go over things, right? We all know that. There's a lot of people out there, they say, no, we'll read it at our own time, right? You can't enforce those things. It's not possible. Where it's not humanly possible, what is possible is for you to give it to them at least.
So as long as it's been proved that we have given it to them, I do a lot of leases. The residential tenancy agreement, I get them to initial each page that shows that, hey, you've done that. And I would suggest with this, it's almost worthwhile for the client to initial each page to say, hey, yeah, I've gone through this with Elliot or whatever.
Yeah, guys, the whole idea here is to again have an implied client relationship, no gray area from day one. So if you guys, sit down and go over this RICO guide in a lot of detail, like Elliot's suggesting, hey, initial here, this is what this means, initial here, this is what this means. That subconsciously, if you do your job correctly, should push people into trusting you and wanting to create that client relationship with you, whether it's implied or it's not. But you cannot work with a self-represented party. You can only work with clients, and you need client relationships. So if you think you're going to just forward this guide over to somebody and they're going to become a client, it won't work like that. You have to prove that the intention from the first interaction with anybody is for them to become a client. And the only way you're going to be able to go ahead and prove that that's what you've done is by having more structure in your processes, like sending this guide, like sitting down with them in a structured appointment and going through the guide, like going through a buyer representation and showing to them and proving to them why you are that professional that they should be hiring.
David,
One further question in regards to the working with a realtor. On the right-hand side of the page, there's these self-represented party. And that's, you're only getting, putting down there and getting them to initial that only if they say, hey, I want to be self-represented. That's the only time that they're initialing that right-hand side of the page.
Correct.
And
Thank you.
David, like this one, like I understand in the context of seller, when I show this working with realtor firm to a buyer, what they choose the right side. They say that I'm self-represented. I stop working with them.
Yes.
What if they say that, okay, at this point, I decide to be a self-represented party. I want to see that that if I can appoint you as a realtor or not. So I want to work with you, but as a self-represented.
No, there's nothing like that.
Then you could work, you could sign them into a limited buyer representation agreement where you have to be very specific on what that relationship looks like. Okay? Again, you're gonna hire an accountant. You cannot hire an accountant to do your books for you unless you hire that accountant. If you want to hire a lawyer to represent you in court, you cannot test the relationship with the lawyer in court before committing. And guys,
Remember what we discussed on the first slide? If they are self-represented, you treat them just like they were represented by another realtor. The other realtor can come and sue you if you're giving them advice and they're signed under contract with them. You want to be sued by anybody because they're self-represented? Because that's what's going to happen. Right? You're not allowed to give them any information. Under your code of ethics, this is the code of ethics. This is the promise that we take when we have our RICO insurance. Right? We cannot deviate from it.
Oh, no, I understand that, Sabiha, but often I come across people who comes and then they don't want to sign anything immediately. And when you present them this working with realtor firm, they're like, no, I'm going to work with you, but I'm not going to sign with you now. And if you push them that time, they would be like, okay, why don't
you don't have to sign anything, Abu. We already talked about it. That's implied relationship, right? That is an implied client.
Right, and that's
signature on anything is not required.
And that's very difficult to prove, the implied relationship. Like, what if later they came up and said, okay, we said that we are the self-represented party. All the while that you have given us,
Abu, I promise you, I know what your hesitation is. And listen, we all practice real estate like this, where we're in a courting period with our clients. We court. There is no more courting. That is gone. There is no more courting. You cannot test, and clients cannot test you anymore. Now, if clients want to work with you as a professional, they have to make a conscious choice to hire you. And that's what it is. And we're going to have to be way better at communicating our value right from day one to move them into a client relationship as quickly as possible. There's no such thing in any other profession. You know what, guys? I think this is great for the industry because I think the realtors that embrace this are going to wipe the floor with everybody else. If you can sit down and have a professional presentation about why a client should hire you from day one, then you're not going to worry about who they're speaking with, whether they're going and looking at properties with anybody else, what's going on behind your back. You're going to have a professional relationship. You're going to be able to communicate your value, and you're going to be able to conduct yourself in a manner that protects their fiduciary duties from day one. And this is what TRESA wants to accomplish.
David, why is it that you bring up about your lawyers and your accountants? So I've had the same ones for years. I do not re-sign things every time I go see them, but you put a deal together with your client that you've had for the last 20 years. You have to keep re-signing all this paperwork.
Well, I mean, you bring a good point, and the reason that there's such a big difference between the industries is because there's so much more professionalism in the other industries, and the lack of professionalism in the real estate industry is necessitating them to go to these extreme measures. So realtors understand that you can't go around and give advice to people who haven't committed to working with you. It's crazy.
David, I think you're absolutely right. And you do get it. I'm from the old school, and I am very anxious to come up to the times. I think from a quick look at that working with a real estate agent information guide that's on rico.on.ca, it seems to be very strongly in support of people seeing our value and encouraging them to sign with us. This is my dilemma.
1000%.
So David, my dilemma is that my clientele are geriatric, just like me, and they don't know what to make of that form. Can I make a suggestion?
Of course.
I know you have David Corman, who is probably the plainest speaking lawyer I've ever met. come in and do various classes. And tell me if I missed the one he did, but I would love David's take on that form in as much as how he could plain speak the values he sees in that form as far as a realtor offering their services to a client and getting a client to commit to that realtor.
I agree with you, Gail. And in fact, David Corman and I have had several meetings about this, and David loves the way I explained it back to him, right?
Oh,
So,
perfect. We'll do it, David and David.
I'm happy to do a seminar with David Corman, and I'm happy to. But you know what, guys? But Gail, you're getting it. This is exactly what TRESA hopes to accomplish. It hopes to establish a very clear and defined professional relationship and usher people into a client relationship a lot sooner, so we avoid this grayness where clients are going to realtor and realtor and realtor and getting advice and advice and advice, and everybody has a different opinion of what the market's doing. Everybody has a different opinion of what values are, and the consumers are going out there talking, having all these conversations without documented representation agreements, and it's like the blind leading the blind. And TRESA hopes that all this will stop.
David, do you think this is because they're trying to eliminate X amount of real estate agents that are on a part-time or not as dedicated to the profession as they should be?
I don't think they have that motivation, Regina. I think they want every realtor out there to conduct themselves like a professional.
And I have another question.
Yes.
Is that mean with the implied
if you guys Regina, just hold your thoughts for one quick second. Sure. I don't know, I've been really involved in organized real estate in the last 3 to 6 months. Like I'm really entrenching myself with TREB and with OREA, with Korea, with a lot of these conferences and getting to know these wonderful industry leaders and talking to these people. The theme of professionalism is running so deep in our organized real estate right now. If you look at every single elected board of director member for TREB, they're all running on platform of professionalism. If you look at the communication that TREB is putting out, professionalism is at the forefront of every conversation that's happening right now. And it's going to stay this way. And I have a feeling that this is going to be transformative for our industry, but in a good way. And the realtors have really embraced this. I can't tell you guys enough. If you embrace this, this will lead you to doing way more deals than you've ever had in the past. Clients want stability too. They want structure. Think about our kids in school. Like, structure is so important. If you outline structure for the consumer from day one and tell them, guys, this is a professional relationship. This is what it looks like. This is the journey I'm going to take you on, A, B, and C. This is how we're going to define our relationship. Who wouldn't we want to be a part of that?
David, I have just one question. When you're not signing a buyer representation, like they're working like a self-representative, so that client, but that person, he can work in the same time with a lot of different realtors?
No, when you're self-represented, you cannot, the only thing that person can do is they can go to the listing agent, because the listing agent has a fiduciary duty to their clients. So they're the only ones that can show their own property. A self-represented client cannot work with any co-op agents other than going directly to listing agents to work with. Does that make sense?
Not work with, because the listing agent cannot give them any information, cannot fill any forms with them, cannot give them any neighborhood comps, no ideas, no indication of what they should or should not do, right? The listing agent can either show them the property themselves, or get a written permission from the seller for the self-represented party to go into the property themselves. That's it. It's limited, very limited.
Okay, guys. I
Guys,
know
I think we should really call it a day. It has been a long session. I just want to make sure our Christmas party is in. We've lost a few people here, but is in a few days. Please, if you have not registered, go ahead and register. It makes my life a lot easier to organize the event. So please go in the Eventbrite for the Christmas party and register. We would really like to see everybody there.
And Sabiha, just before we end, we are going to have brokerage open sessions where we're going to do these a few times a week, where we are going to teach TRESA and Realm, and we're going to be available for anybody to drop in to the brokerage at those designated time slots, where we're going to have an open discussion, and we're going to make ourselves fully available to everybody, so we can go through everything, we can go through all the forms, we can go through all the rules, we can go through Realm together as well. And we're going to be starting those. Sabiha, any idea when we're going to be starting those open
So yes, please. I was hoping to get time till the 5th so that we're past the event, because there's a lot to be taken care of during that. So post, I will be sending out an email shortly with this information, and then also the days that we're going to be open. I'm going to choose 2 days a week, and we will have an open forum for 2 hours that people can just walk in. They will be walk-in sessions. Okay, so there will be a follow-up email, guys.
Did you guys forget?
I do it all the time.
Did you guys overlook, did not confirmation of co-op change because of all that multiple?
Yes, it did. Let me, that's one that we haven't gotten to yet, so I can pull that one up.
Thanks.
So Kelly, remember that also the 325 and 326 are from the same series, right? The 320 is the confirmation of cooperation, and then you have the extra 2 forms, which is the 320 and the 325. Remember how multiple representation was very small on the confirmation of cooperation in a little box? Now they have made it
that's the
big
one I'm
and full
using
form.
for. Yeah, that's the one I'm using for my transaction for the day after tomorrow, because I'm going to be doing. I'm representing as a customer, right? The 2 on Sunday that are putting offers in on my property. So I'm going with the customer service and then the old confirmation of co-op.
Right.
A question regarding the 320 confirmation of co-op and the 320, I think it's, I'm not sure, 325, 326, about that limited, you're only representing them on a certain property. Do you have to use the new one? Because prior to that, I would use the 320, but I would put in there an address specific location, you know, as opposed to Mississauga or, you know, other areas.
So the 320 and the 325 is not submitted with the offer. It is submitted right as soon as an expected multiple representation may occur.
Yeah.
Okay. So remember when we talked about the timing of the multiple representation, that I showed your property listed by you to my client. Right off the bat, my client said, love this property, we want to put an offer, right? And the offer presentation is next Friday. What do I need to do? Get that one of those 2 forms filled out and send it across to you, and you share it with your seller.
Can you, is it still allowed, for an example, you have on the listing offer presentation next Wednesday, and my client really likes it and wants to put an offer in now. Can you still do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So Sabiha, do you want to go through how we would fill this form out when we would use multiple representation limited service, and multiple representation and designated?
So guys, remember the difference, okay? So 320, 325 is submitted what? At the time of intention, right? This is going out when we actually prepare the offer, right? So just like we always did, 320, line 1 is when the seller is the listing brokerage is representing the seller, right? A. One is the listing brokerage is not representing the buyer, just like we always did. Number two, the listing brokerage is providing assistance to the buyer, and the buyer is self-represented party. What does this mean? I have a listing. The buyer is not represented by me. However, I open the door, I let them in, I'm receiving an offer from them, and I'm presenting it to my client because I will always be the person who's presenting the offer. So I do, as a second-hand person, become, right, the person who's representing that, presenting that, or not representing, but presenting that offer to my seller client. Multiple representation, as always, is multiple representation, right? My listing, my seller, or my listing, my listing, my buyer, David's listing, my buyer, but they're not under designated representation. Multiple representation and limited service representation. C and B are both, one is designated, one is limited service. We understand what the limited service is, right? It is when we are dealing with only a few elements of presenting or listing the property. Number two is designated. So multiple representation and designated representation. We're pretty clear on that too, right? Two agents, one property, two agents from the same brokerage. The listing is signed under designated representation. Okay, David, can you scroll down because I can't.
Just really quickly, if we have buyers signed up right now and listings right now, would we just be using, like, assume that it's multiple representation, just as it was before, if there's an offer that comes from our brokerage? And
yes, so any relationship that you have prior to December 1st, right, will operate, even if it's just customer service, will operate under the same rules as REBA 2002. Okay, all the way till March. David, can you just quickly check, is it March 30th or is it March 1st while I do this?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, check. Go ahead, Sabiha.
Yeah, it's either, sorry guys, I forget now. It's either March 30th or March 1st, after which you cannot service them under REBA 2002.
Okay, so you're on paragraph 2 now?
Yeah, so second one, the brokerage has represented the buyer and the brokerage will be paid by the buyer directly. Remember, somebody asked if the listing is self-represented, where do they get paid from? Okay, or remember what we said, if they are saying that they want to be self-represented, the seller, we're talking about the seller alone right now, because remember number 2 was what? Selling a property that is not listed by any brokerage in the old 320, right? So if you're not filling out the number 1 where it's talking about the listing itself and what the relationship we have as a buyer representation with the listing, number 2 is completely separate of that, devoid of that. So the brokerage represents the buyer and the brokerage will be paid either directly by the buyer. Why? Because the listing is self-represented by the seller, or the seller in accordance with the seller limited service representation. I rang the bell, I have a buyer, may I bring an offer only for this client? Absolutely, I'm signing the limited listing representation specific to your buyer only. Okay. Multiple representation is where I am representing both parties, however, properly, not without a limitation, but with fiduciary duties all the way from end to end. And this is also a property that was not listed on with any other brokerage. I rang the bell, they're prepared to work with me in totality as my clients, then that's when I'll sign that. Represented and limited representation, the brokerage is represented both the seller and the buyer, where one of both the seller or the buyer are receiving limited services. So unlike number 2, which was dedicated only to the listing, in this one, which is C, it might be the buyer that is limited representation, right? I'm going to work with you. I want to be shown only 6 properties. It is a limited service that in out of these 5, if I want to put an offer, it is number C that I will be signing.
So I
Multiple
can,
representation. Sorry, Kelly?
sorry, that second part on C, I get the multiple representation. The second part of that, the limited service representation, can I view that almost so I can draw from my experience with the old way? Can I draw that in as almost like a customer service agreement?
Sort of, but forget that word customer.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
there's
like,
a difference
that's a
here.
nasty word.
It's limited, but it's still
Yes.
fiduciary.
Yes.
Right? And that is why, see, there is a very smart aspect to it, right? It's still fiduciary, but it is limited. Why? Because under a complete one, what should it be, my fiduciary ethic duty? That I will show you as many listings as possible under your umbrella of choices, correct? Does it not? That's how it read, right? By representation, that I will show you as a representative all listings.
Correct.
Limited, 5 listings, 10 listings, 15 listings from this date to this date. That's it.
Yes.
Fiduciary duties still apply. However, the buyer representation actuality is any and all listings that are in that region under my budget or for my choice, I have to show it to them. Otherwise, I've held back. Right? This
Correct.
is limited too.
Yes, yes. But
Right?
the customer service, you're basically, you're not guiding on anything other than preparing an offer and in
Exactly.
being ethical and being truthful and not lying.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's the way I look at that limited service. If that's what I listed on my limited service agreement, that I'm going to prepare the contract, do a showing, right? I'm the one that's controlling that limited access, the limited service representation agreement, correct?
100%. Kelly, quick thing, right? See, remember that it says multiple representation. Someone can come to you, right? They're your best friend. They're already dealing with another realtor, but they say, hey, Kelly, you have 5 listings in your brokerage in this area. I have a buyer representation in another area. I have signed a buyer representation in Ajax with such and such agent because that's where I'm looking for. I want to buy an additional investment property. I see that you have 3 really good listings from your brokerage on your website.
Yep.
What happens there, right? It's limited, multiple representation.
Yep, that's right.
Makes sense, yeah?
I'm limited. I'm going to, sure, I can help you, but I'm going to just service you with filling out the offers. You tell me exactly, no guidelines, and I will be truthful and ethical.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Last one, guys, multiple representation and designated representation, right? Where the buyer and the seller are represented by the designated representatives of a brokerage. Okay, Kelly has a listing. I have a buyer. Both of us got that line of designated filled out. Kelly is designated to her listing. I am designated to my buyer. It is not multiple representation in its totality. Right? It is under designated representation. The buyer and seller understand and acknowledge that the buyer designated representatives represents more than one client in the same trade, resulting in a multiple representation, and the duty of disclosure to both buyer and seller client is as more particularly set out in the agreement. Right? So now I have 2 buyers for Kelly's listing.
Yeah.
What happens at that point? That was completely limbo, right? It was ambiguous. I could have had 3. What do? We have 3 clients. One of them has this much budget. The other one has another budget. The third one has to have a mortgage approval. They're all interested and can be shown the same property that is Kelly's listing. Right?
Yeah, that's
It can
exactly
happen.
happening
It's a
to me, right?
possibility. It's not a very
yeah.
often possibility, but it's a possibility.
But it's
Right?
actually happening to me right now. That's exactly what I'm going through. I'm showing two properties on my own property to two separate people that want
Exactly,
me to
Kelly. And
represent
this
them.
saves you a lot of hassle, a lot of complaints, RICO complaints. Or no, everything is black and white, clear. Everybody's been sat down. Everybody's been told this is the rules of engagement here. Right?
But as I said, I don't have to fill this out because it's implied because it happened yesterday. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna show both their properties, list them as customers, and then not guide them on anything. Just say, I'm here. I can't help you with price. I'm representing the seller. You guys are two customers, and I'm just here to
Yeah,
facilitate
because
it.
you're
May the
still
best man
functioning
win.
under REBA 2002. That's right.
Yeah.
Number two is the buyer client and the seller client are each separately represented by different designated representations of the same brokerage. Simple. No multiple representation. Only you have designated, I have designated, I have an offer for your listing. We're going to our separate cubicles, like David said, in different islands, and we're dealing with it separately without discussing the nuances of our particular clients with anybody, including management, including David, including Sabiha. Number three, the designated representatives is providing representation to the buyer client, and the brokerage is providing service to the buyer clients. Okay, what the hell is that? The designated representative is
I'm reading it
providing
too.
representation to the buyer client.
Oh, okay. So that would be if providing. So the brokerage, which must have been the listing, is in multiple representation.
There's
It's a
if I
repetitive
may
thing.
say so, I find that there might be a misprint
might have
here.
made a mistake.
Yeah, that's
It has to be
reprinting.
providing service to the seller client.
To the seller client, yep.
I'm sorry, I think there's a mistake. I'll clarify that, guys, for you guys. But
Sabiha,
David, scroll
who
them.
signs Form 320 now? Is it still just the two agencies?
Both
involved?
agents, both buyer and seller.
Oh, wow, okay.
But yeah,
All
this
right.
is property
Great.
sold by buyer brokerage.
Yeah, always, David.
Oh.
Number two is always that, right? Buyer brokerage. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why they have number 3 as services of the buyer client. On the one that we thought should say seller.
Yeah, but there's a designated representative is providing representation to the buyer client, and the brokerage is providing service.
That does. If the designate if my buyer, I designated them, then I'm the one that's on this deal. The brokerage I would have to have checked multiple offer for that.
Yep.
Or multiple representation, I mean.
Guys, these forms literally came out 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I get it. So see,
Okay.
remember that this is number two. Let's go back to REBA 2002. What was number two? No, don't scroll back. David, we'll stay there. Okay, so number two was when the listing was not listed by any other brokerage. We remember that on our old 320?
Yeah.
Right? So remember that keyhole. Listing is never listed by anybody, right? It can either be a buyer directly going to a self-representative with you, or it is the seller is doing a limited service agreement with you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So it's just simply saying that the buyer is either or, whether the listing is either limited or it's not listed at all, and the buyer is represented under because remember that even the designated buyer is still under representation by the whole brokerage, right? The number one on that form, the designation form is what? It's listing brokerage, buyer or seller, or buying brokerage, buyer or seller, and then it is designated person, designated party. So that's all it's saying is that the buyer is represented by the brokerage and the buyer.
Yes, and then there's just, it happens to be a designated representative involved
Yes,
in
that's
that
it.
one side.
This is a simplest method way.
Yeah.
And the listing is not listed, or if it's listed, it's listed under this limited service.
Yeah, and I can see how when real estate agents are starting to try to explain the designation versus the multiple representation, I can see where somebody would a client would say, well, if I choose designated, does that forego that if anything happens, then the brokerage, Sutton Group Summit, is not gonna support
100%.
me, right?
No, it's right there. It's the first line. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, no. Sutton Group Summit, we have your listing. They're representing us. They're just saying that in this designated that I can't discuss private matters.
Yeah.
But legally and everything that goes along with a standard listing still applies.
The brokerage is still, brokerage is still held accountable. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
David, scroll down, please. Yeah. Cooperating brokerage complies section number 3, which always is the case, how they're paid, right? The cooperating brokerage represents the interest of the buyer in this transaction, which is simple. The cooperating brokerage who has a seller limited service representation with the seller, also very simple. Cooperating brokerage commission is paid either by the listing brokerage, or cooperating brokerage will be paid any other which way, which can be a buyer, which can be a lawyer, which can be the seller directly, right? So many different ways. Can you scroll down there? This is exactly what we did before. Scroll down further, please. Yeah. This is the same as the end of 320.
It seems to me that this form, in order to be filled out correctly, you would have to speak to the listing agent before you could fill it out, which is a good thing, because how many times have you received an offer from a buyer's agent and they just send you an offer and they don't call you and ask you anything?
Yeah, and even like, you know, I've come across this. I don't know whether Manjot can just come on speaker or not and share, or maybe Arsh can. Multiple times it happens where we have you know, the both sides multiple representation, and the confirmation of cooperation is filled out. Or 320, you never filled out the co-op side, right? Because there was no co-op agent. Technically, the relationship was only between the brokerage, and so there was only one relationship, and co-op in the cooperation side, the co-op form was there. So staff would always have to call up the realtor, say, okay, who is the other? It says multiple representation, but who is the other realtor? Right? Sometimes it might not be Frank's listing selling, and Frank is the buyer representation also, but it says multiple representation. So this one, it actually really clarifies who is getting paid the other side when it's multiple representation. And that's why that portion of the multiple representation is actually properly explained.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, in competing offers, we have to disclose multiple representation. Now, do we have to go specifically and explain that this is this sort of multiple representation to?
No, this is not for your, this is for, remember, all of this is boiling down to what? Your own client. Right? Always remember that it's always boiling down to your own client and your services to your own client. Even the open offer, it is not to help out the other side. You actually technically can screw up the other side, because I can say, oh, I have $50,000 more on this offer, but I don't share with you that it has 20 conditions on it.
But I would have to disclose that I have multiple representation, like I represent the buyer, right? If it's competing.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Wow, that is going to really make mayhem of multiple offers, isn't it? And the seller chooses an open bidding.
Okay, guys, I have a headache now. I think we should end the session.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
thank you,
done.
guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying. And thank you for your patience as we navigate this. I know there's a lot of information and we will continue bringing you guys updates. We will continue to stay on top of it. And we will continue to develop resources to help you guys excel in this new era with TRESA. We're going to look at technologies, how we can help you stay compliant. We're going to look at different regulations. We're going to look at different ways to help you guys navigate. So please be patient with us, and we're going to do those open sessions.
Yeah.
I hope to see.
Yeah, guys, and we will have open houses twice a week for an hour and a half, I think. And I'll tell you guys which days and what time it'll be fixed. So you can always come in. In case I'm not in the office, I'll just send out a message that I'm not there, but otherwise it'll be an open house. We'll start with twice a week because I know there's a lot of realtors that are coming to me already for Realm and help on that. So I'm going to keep it twice a week for the first few months and then maybe reduce it to once a month after that. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, twice a week, and then we'll reduce it to once a month after that.
In the short time, we still can dial either one of you guys for advice, right?
100%, Kelly.
Okay.
You know where to find me.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thank you, everybody. Have a great Friday. Happy weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look out for that email that I'll be sending soon, huh, guys?
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.